All right, we are back with our final episode of the draft cycle, which means it'll probably be 9 months before you hear from us again, at least. But it's been a lot of fun. I think this is the most like structured way that we've gone through it. We decided we wanted to kind of split out the videos this year instead of doing like a 3 hour podcast. I think we ended up going a little longer on some of the episodes than we expected this year, but hopefully, for those that watched, you enjoyed listening and got to hear some more detail on these guys. So, John, thanks for doing it throughout the year.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun, and I liked what we did this year, talking about each guy individually. I thought it gave us a chance to dive a lot deeper on what their strengths and weaknesses were.
All right, so this is just kind of a review and an opportunity for us to talk about the class as a whole again now that we've reviewed it in detail, and also just provide any updates on where we're at with some of these players. So, I think the main update that John and I have. I don't want to speak for him fully, but I think this is kind of where we've both landed is after thinking more about Cam Ward, watching him in more detail, and evaluating him, I think we both have decided, okay, I would take Cam Ward at number one. I think it's important to note, I do not view him on the same level as a Caleb Williams, a Drake May. I don't think he's in that top tier. But to me, after watching a lot of the other guys and just like contrasting them to Ward and seeing the things he does compared to most guys, it kind of just reminds you like, oh, this guy does have some special traits that probably make him worth betting on. I am not as convinced that the percentage he works out is as high as I think some people are, but I think this is the type of swing you have to take, especially, in this draft specifically, if you're a team like the Titans. I think this is a bet worth making.
Yeah, I mean, he has the physical tools and traits that you're chasing at quarterback now. He has that really good arm, maybe not quite elite, but very, very good arm. The play style is what wins right now in the NFL if he can just cut down on some of those negative plays. So I originally have him as kind of a late first, and I think if you're looking at like just the strengths and weaknesses of him as a player, I think he probably still falls in that range. To me, he was similar of an eval as like a Jaden Daniels. He's that level of prospect. But I think both of them, when you look at them, like they have the physical talent that you would be willing to take first overall.
Yeah.
And especially with some of the moves, Cam Ward, I think, needs a pretty good offensive line, or at least an average offensive line in front of him, because of some of his problems under pressure. And the Titans made some upgrades along their offensive line to at least creep back towards average. And I think that by doing that, I think they positioned themselves well to take him and probably be pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, Daniels last year, like, I completely whiffed on his processing. I thought it was below average, and it turns out he's like amazing at it. So anytime you whiff that big, like that's where those kind of misses happen. I don't want to do the same thing with Ward. I also just think, to me, this is one of the biggest things I think about with these types of players is, are you making bad decisions because you are choosing to, or because you can't help yourself? And those sound like the same thing, but Ward is a guy that I think makes outrageous decisions that also, if he flips a switch and gets to the NFL, he can immediately stop doing those things, because it's just let me see if I can try this. Let me see if I can do this. Not I can't see the field at all, or I can't process what is in front of me. It's kind of the Mahomes thing. Like when he was in college, he took all those risks. He was able to dial that back, and it's really hard to project that on a guy, but I think Ward showed it enough where, yeah, I am willing to take a bet on that upside. Okay. Beyond that, there's a lot of guys in this draft that you can make an argument for somewhere between the second and fifth round. You'll see here, John and I have some varying opinions on those guys. I think the biggest differences we have are Shuck, who I am higher on, McCord, who I'm higher on, and then Dart, who I am much lower on. Those are kind of the guys that we have the biggest differences on. I definitely trend more towards that gunslinger type as we talked about on the McCord episode. I think you appreciate the opportunity Dart still has to improve at the NFL level, probably more than I do. Any other comments on kind of where we differ in this mid round range?
Yeah, I think that I appreciate processing, but probably not to the level that you. And I think that you you value that in prospects more. And I think I probably chase upside a little bit more than you do, which is crazy that we both have Milrow where he is, but that one is just a little bit too much unpolished for me. But I think the biggest thing for me with Dart was I saw a lot of upside there with the physical tools that I think are very good. And then with Shuck, I I'm really worried about the injuries
Yeah.
and about the age. I just think that that is enough that I wouldn't really want to take him very high, but I think he's a good player. So I think that is going to be really interesting to see how his career plays out.
Yeah, which that's a good example where our evals were probably exactly the same, and just the value that we put on those
Yeah.
specific things, that's really where it comes out differently. And there definitely there were some guys where we had like Dart is probably the one that we had the biggest disagreements on him as a player. Like that happens too. But Shuck, I
Yeah.
think, is an example of just what do you value? Yeah, what do you prioritize? That's really what it comes down to. You mentioned Milrow. Not to relitigate the Dart thing again. I thought Nate Tice made a really good point and like kind of crystallized for me why I have Milrow above Dart, which is he said if I'm looking at two players and I think they're both bad at processing, then why don't I just take the one that I think is like an just a ridiculous athlete? And that's probably where the eval is different. Like I think I view his processing as much poorer than you do, but that was as I was starting to think about like where I have these guys stacked. When he said that, I was like, ah, yes, that is exactly like my thoughts on where these guys shake out in the mid rounds.
Yeah, and I can definitely understand that, respect that. And I think for me, the reason that I ended up having Dart somewhat higher than Milrow is because Dart is a much better passer. Milrow obviously has the elite. Uh, he's got a great arm. He's got the elite athleticism, but he struggles a lot as a passer. He's very inconsistent. Sometimes he uh, shows some nice touch on deep balls, but a lot of times his accuracy is pretty leaves a lot to be desired. Um, and I will also just add that I actually came in with a bias about Jalen Milrow as an Alabama fan, and I will acknowledge that this season kind of left a sour taste in my mouth, and that probably did color my analysis of Jalen Milrow a little bit. But I tried my best to take a step back from that and look at him just as a prospect. And I think ultimately, obviously in the heat of the moment when I'm mad about the way that he lost us a few games, he and other players, I won't put it all on him, but at the end of the day, in those moments, I was like, oh, he is not worth getting to next year. And then you go back and watch the tape, you're like, okay, actually, he has some physical gifts that he is definitely going to get drafted, and there is a realistic chance that he could figure this out and be a good quarterback in the NFL still.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think that covers kind of the mid rounds specifically. John, any other like big picture takeaways that you had now on the back end of this?
Um, I think that there are a lot of people low on Ewers. We are probably on the lower
Yeah,
end of that still. Um, but surprised me going into the process with how successful Texas has been the last couple of years under Sark. I thought Ewers was going to be better, and I went in thinking he was at least going to be all right, and I really came away thinking he is pretty limited physically. He makes a couple nice throws here and there, but I thought that he was inconsistent from a mechanics standpoint. He was inconsistent with his accuracy and placement, and that just really surprised me.
yeah,
So I obviously gave him an undrafted grade. He probably will get drafted. I'd say at least day 3, but I wouldn't want to touch him.
Yeah, that one I was expecting to be disappointed, but not to that degree.
Yeah.
That is what I will say for sure. Like that was a big surprise. Yeah. I think the only other big picture takeaway I will share is I was going in. I was expecting to kind of have like clear tiers of like Cam Ward here, the next group of like Shador and Dart, and then a pretty significant gap between them and like the rest of the guys. But after coming in, like obviously came in much lower on Dart, but coming in lower on Sanders, I think both of us are a little lower than consensus on him. And then I really liked Shuck, McCord, Howard, even like Riley Leonard. I'm probably higher on him than most people. I think there's a huge group here of guys that to me are all pretty interchangeable. And I think one or two of these guys will probably end up being a starter long term. So I'm very curious to see who that ends up being, what the landing spots look like, which obviously for these mid round guys is a huge thing, especially for them. Because I did not expect to have this many guys kind of all bunched very close together in the day 2 to early day 3 range.
Yeah, and part of me, when I was giving out grades, I was like, am I giving out too many mid-round grades?
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think everybody deserves a first-round grade, but some of these guys have to be seventh rounders. Some of them have to be undrafted. So, but really, when you look at the type of players that we, especially that I focused on, you evaluated a couple of others there, but these guys they do have some legitimate talent, and I think they are worthy of being picked in those middle rounds. And to your point, when you're taking this many swings on guys in the mid rounds, probably one of them is going to work out. So it'll be interesting to see which one does and why they do, and whether or not we like touched on that in our eval. We tried to give the best upside. If he succeeds, it will be because of this. It will look like this.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see if we were right about those things long term.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Especially on those like developmental guys where we
Yeah.
expect it to take some time. Those are always like very interesting to follow. So yeah. All right. Any final takeaways from you before we wrap?
No, looking forward to Thursday night.
Yes, yes, that would be a lot of fun. I will read off my rankings just in case there's anybody listening on audio. John, if you have yours ready, you can feel free to list them off after mine. So, Cam Ward is my QB1. I have an early first on him. Tyler Shuck is my QB2, late second round grade for him. Shador Sanders is my QB3, early third. Kyle McCord also at 4 with an early third round grade. Will Howard is my QB5 with a late third. Jalen Murrow and Riley Leonard are my QB6 and QB7, both at fourth round grades. Jackson Dart and Max Brosmer are my QB8 and QB9 with fifth round grades. I have 3 guys with sixth round grades at 10, 11, and 12, which are Dylan Gabriel, Quinn Ewers, and Curtis Rourke in that order. And then the one undrafted free agent that I graded in this cycle is Seth Hennigan at number 13. If there's any guys that do get drafted that are not on this list, I will add them to that as well. So John, feel free if you have that list handy, feel free to take it.
Yeah, I got mine here. So I had Cam Ward first. I would take him first overall. I have more of like a mid to late first round grade on him overall, but definitely fine taking that talent number 1 overall. I have Jackson Dart second with a second round grade. Shador Sanders third with a third round grade. Will Howard fourth with a late third to early fourth round grade. Jalen Milrow and Tyler Shuck both 5 and 6 with a fourth round grade. Went Milrow over Shuck just because of the age and the physical talents that he has over Shuck. Kyle McCord and Dylan Gabriel 7 and 8 with a fifth round grade. For the same reason, I had McCord a little bit higher than Gabriel just because of the physical ability. I think Gabriel's very limited in what his upside really is. And then ninth, I had Quinn Ewers as an undrafted guy that I would not draft. I didn't evaluate the other guys. I probably should have evaled Seth Hennigan. I'm currently finishing up law school at Memphis. So
Don't waste your time. It was not worth your time. I was watching this afternoon. I was like, why? I could have skipped this one. Did not know that going in, but yeah, would not feel too bad about missing that one.
Good to know.
All right. Thanks for listening to yours off as well, John. That'll do it for our final episode of this draft cycle. For those of you that listened to a lot of the episodes, hope you enjoyed following along. And we will be back next year with what I hope is a little bit more interesting of a class. I think this year was a little bit of a down year. Still fun to talk about. It's always fun to talk about the quarterbacks, but hopefully we'll get a more interesting year next year, similar to last year where we had six quarterbacks go round one. So that'll be interesting to follow as the year goes on. So thanks again, John, for joining throughout this draft cycle.
Yeah, thanks for me.
All right, that'll do it for this episode. Thanks again to everybody for listening, and we will catch you not soon at all, probably in like 9 months.
Very long. Bring on Arch.
Yes, that's right. Bring on Arch.